Hey guys, hope you're all okay. Thank you so much for all the work you've been sending in. I can't believe you've done so much of that heat that's been happening. It has been unbearable. But thank you guys, and we have really loved seeing it. So, fantastic Mr. Fox. I'm just going to find my book, see where Miss Jones left us. I think we were just on chapter 16. Lovely, okay, the woman. Quick, said Mr. Fox, hide! He and Badger and the smallest fox jumped up onto a shelf and crouched behind a row of big cider jars. Peering around the jars, they saw a huge woman coming down to the cellar. At the foot of the steps, the woman paused, looking to right and left. Then she turned and headed straight for the place where Mr. Fox and Badger and the smallest fox were hiding. She stopped right in front of them. The only thing between her and them was a row of cider jars. She was so close. Mr. Fox could hear the sound of her breathing, peeping through the crack between two bottles. He noticed that she carried a big rolling pin in one hand. And there's the lady there, can you see?
Morning.
Morning, buddy, you alright?
Yeah, good, you?
Yeah, not bad, thank you.
Right. See you in a bit.
See ya. How many will he want this time, Mrs. Bean? Said the woman shouted. And from the top of the steps, the other woman called back, bring up 2 or 3 jars. He drank 4 yesterday, Mrs. Bean. Yes, but he won't want that many today because he's not going to be up there more than a few hours longer. He says the fox is bound to make a run for it this morning. It can't possibly stay down that hole another day without food. The woman in the cellar reached out and lifted a jar of cider from the shelf. The jar she took was next. The jar she took was next, but one to the jar behind which Mr. Fox was crouching. I'll be glad when that rotten brute is killed and strung up on the front porch, she called out. And by the way, Mrs. Bean, your husband promised I could have the tail as a souvenir. The tail's been all shot to pieces, said the voice from upstairs. Didn't you know that? You mean it's ruined? Of course it's ruined. They shot the tail but missed the fox. Oh no, said the woman. I did so want that tail. You can have the head instead, Mabel. You can get it stuffed and hang it on your bedroom wall. Hurry up now with that cider. Yes, ma'am, I'm coming, said the big woman. There she is. Oh, can you see? Fox, Badger and the smallest fox.
Sorry,
Forgot something?
got to clean my teeth.
Okay. You're in the wrong place. There's no sink in this room. If she takes one more, she'll see us, thought Mr. Fox. He could feel the smallest fox's body pressed tightly against his own, quivering with excitement. Will 2 be enough, Mrs. Bean, or shall I take 3? My goodness, Mabel, I don't care as long as you get a move on. Then 2 it is, said the huge woman, speaking to herself now. He drinks too much anyway. Carrying a jar in each hand and with the rolling pin tucked under one arm, she walked away across the cellar. At the foot of the steps, she paused and looked around, sniffing the air. There's rats down here again, Mrs. Bean. I can smell 'em. Then poison them, woman, poison them. You know where the poison's kept? Yes, ma'am, Mabel said. She climbed slowly out of sight up the steps. The door slammed. Quick, said Mr. Fox. Grab a jar each and run for it. Rat stood on his high shelf and shrieked. What did I tell you? You nearly got me nabbed, didn't you? You nearly gave the game away. You keep out of here from now on. I don't want you around. This is my place. You, said Mr. Fox, are going to be poisoned. Poppycock, said Rat.
They're all clean.
It's good to know.
All clean.
Did you brush them for enough time?
Oh, I only did a minute.
Oh, it's meant to be 2. Back you go.
Oh, sorry.
Honestly. I genuinely can't remember where I am, guys. Let's give it a go. Right. Poppycock, said Rat. I sit up here and watch her putting the stuff down. She'll never get me. Mr. Fox and Badger and the smallest fox ran across the cellar, clutching a gallon jar each. Goodbye, Rat, they called down as they disappeared through the hole in the wall. Thanks for the lovely cider. Thieves, shrieked Rat. Robbers, bandits, burglars. Oh, Rat does not look happy there, does he? Okay, chapter 17, The Great Feast. Back in the tunnel, they paused so that Mr. Fox could brick up the hole in the wall. He was humming to himself as he put the bricks back in place. I can still taste that glorious cider, he said. What an interesting fellow Rat is. He has bad manners, Badger said. All rats have bad manners. I've never met a polite rat yet. And he drinks too much, said Mr. Fox, putting the last brick in place. There we are. Now, home to the feast. They grabbed their jars of cider and off they went. Mr. Fox in front, the smallest fox came next, and Badger last. There they are, going across the tunnel. Through the tunnel, should I say. Along the tunnel they flew, past the turning that led to Bunce's mighty storehouse, past Boggis's chicken house number 1, and then up the long home stretch towards the place where they knew Mrs. Fox would be waiting. Keep it up, my darlings, shouted Mr. Fox. We'll soon be there. Think what's waiting for us at the other end. And just think what we're bringing home with us in these jars. That ought to cheer up poor Mrs. Fox. Mr. Fox sang a little song as he ran. Now, we've had this discussion before, haven't we? I can't sing, so I'm not going to, but I will say it. Home again, swiftly I glide, back to my beautiful bride. She'll not feel so rotten as soon as she's gotten some cider inside her inside. Then Badger joined in. Oh, poor Mrs. Badger, he cried, so hungry she very near died. But she'll not feel so hollow if she'll only swallow some cider inside her inside. They were still singing as they rounded the final corner and burst in upon the most wonderful and amazing sight any of them had ever seen. The feast was just beginning. A large dining room had been hollowed out of the earth, and in the middle of it, seated around a huge table, were no less than 29 animals. I'm going to show you the picture first before I read out the names and numbers of all the animals that are there. Mrs. Fox and 3 small foxes. Mrs. Badger and 3 small badgers. Mole and Mrs. Mole and 4 small moles. Rabbit and Mrs. Rabbit and 5 small rabbits. Weasel and Mrs. Weasel and 6 small weasels. The table was covered with chickens and ducks and geese and hams and bacon, and everyone was tucking into the lovely food. My darling, cried Mrs. Fox, jumping up and hugging Mr. Fox. We couldn't wait. Please forgive us. Then she hugged the smallest fox of all, and Mrs. Badger hugged Badger, and everyone hugged everyone else. Amid shouts of joy, the great jars of cider were placed upon the table, and Mr. Fox and Badger and the smallest foxes sat down with the others. You must remember no one had eaten a thing for several days. They were ravenous, so for a while there was no conversation at all. Sounds like dinner in my house. There was only the sound of crunching and chewing as the animals attacked the succulent food. Good adjective. At last Badger stood up. He raised his glass of cider and called out, a toast. I want you all to stand and drink a toast to our dear friend who has saved our lives to this day, Mr. Fox. To Mr. Fox, they all shouted, standing up and raising their glasses. To Mr. Fox, long may he live. Then Mrs. Fox got shyly to her feet and said, I don't want to make a speech. I just want to say one thing, and that is, my husband is a fantastic fox. Everyone clapped and cheered, then Mr. Fox himself stood up. This delicious meal, he began. Oh, I remember what happens next. So I'm going to show you the pictures first. There's Badger with his speech, Mrs. Fox with her little announcement, then Mr. Fox starting to say something. This delicious meal, he began, and then he stopped. In the silence that followed, he let fly a tremendous belch. There was laughter and more clapping. This delicious meal, my friends, he went on, is by courtesy of Messrs. Boggis, Bunce and Bean. More cheering and laughter. And I hope you've enjoyed as much as I have. He let fly another colossal belch. Better out than in, said Badger. There he is. Thank you, said Mr. Fox, grinning hugely. But now, my friends, let us be serious.
Now, they're clean. Yep.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well done, Mr. Morris.
Thank you.
Thank you, said Mr. Fox, grinning hugely. But now, my friends, let us be serious. Let us think of tomorrow and the next day and the days after that. If we go out, we'll be killed, right? Right, they shouted. We'll be shot before we've gone a yard, said Badger. Exactly, said Mr. Fox. But who wants to go out anyway? Let me ask you that. We're all diggers, every one of us. We hate the outside. The outside is full of enemies. We only go out because we have to get food, to get food for our families. But now, my friends, we have an entirely new setup. We have a safe tunnel leading to 3 of the finest stores in the world. We do indeed, said Badger. I've seen them. And you know what this means, said Mr. Fox. It means none of us need ever go out in the open again. There was a buzz of excitement around the table. I therefore invite you all, Mr. Fox went on, to stay here with me forever. Forever, they cried. My goodness, how marvellous. And Rabbit said to Mrs. Rabbit, my dear, just think, we're never going to be shot at again in our lives. We will make, said Mr. Fox, a little underground village with streets and houses on each side, separate houses for badgers and moles and rabbits and weasels and foxes. And every day I will go shopping for you all, and every day we will eat like kings. The cheering that followed this speech went on for many, many minutes. There they are. Looks like they're having a brilliant party. Chapter 18, Still Waiting. Outside the Fox's hole, Boggis, Bunce and Bean sat beside their tents with their guns on their laps. It was beginning to rain. Water was trickling down the necks of the 3 men and into their shoes. There they are. They look extremely happy. He won't stay down there much longer now, Boggis said. The brute must be famished, Bunce said. That's right, said Bean. He'll be making a dash for it any moment, so keep your guns handy. They sat by the hole, waiting for the fox to come out. And as far as I know, they are still waiting. What a fantastic book. Thank you so much for listening to me this morning. And it is the morning because you can tell Mr. Morris had to brush his teeth. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, guys. Try and get as much into me as you can today. It'll be lovely, lovely to see it. Have a great day. See you later, guys.